The last thing Chad expected when he walked into O'Malley's bar that Friday night was to face 10 Marines in full dress blues, their ceremonial swords gleaming under the neon lights. But sometimes, when you disrespect the wrong person, the universe has a way of teaching you lessons you'll never forget. Staff Sergeant Maria Viper Gonzalez sat alone at the bar, her calloused hands wrapped around a beer bottle, trying to wash away the memory of another 16-hour shift analyzing intelligence reports at 28. She carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had stared death in the face and lived to tell about it. What started as a simple case of college boys harassing a woman at a bar would become a viral sensation that destroyed careers, ended a fraternity, and reminded an entire generation that some people have earned respect through blood, sweat, and sacrifice. But the real story isn't about revenge. It's about what happens when ordinary people underestimate extraordinary warriors. O'Malley's bar squats like a weathered fortress just outside the gates of Camp Pendleton, its neon Budweiser sign casting red shadows across the parking lot filled with pickup trucks and motorcycles. The air inside hangs thick with cigarette smoke and the ghosts of 1,000 war stories, while classic rock pounds from speakers that have seen better decades. It's the kind of place where Marines come to forget, civilians come to feel tough, and college kids come to prove they're adults. Maria Gonzalez never planned to become a Marine. Growing up in East L.A., she watched her older brother Miguel struggle with gang violence and poverty, eventually losing him to a drive-by shooting when she was 17. The military offered escape, purpose, and a chance to honor Miguel's memory by protecting others. She excelled in intelligence analysis, her sharp mind and attention to detail making her invaluable in identifying threats before they could materialize. Her current reality was far from the glamorous military life portrayed in movies. Maria lived in a small apartment off base, sending half her paycheck home to help her mother pay rent. She had no boyfriend military life, and relationships rarely mixed well, and her closest companions were the classified files that consumed her days. Her colleagues knew her as Viper for her ability to strike at the heart of complex intelligence puzzles. But few understood the weight she carried from the lives hanging in the balance of her analysis. What made Maria truly special wasn't just her analytical skills, but her unshakable moral compass. She'd turned down lucrative private sector jobs to continue serving, driven by a deep belief that her work saved lives. Her Purple Heart came not from dramatic battlefield heroics, but from refusing to abandon her post during a mortar attack, continuing to process critical intelligence while shrapnel wounds bled through her uniform. The conflict brewing that night wasn't just about harassment, it was about respect, sacrifice, and the invisible battles fought by those who serve in silence. Maria represented everything the college boys couldn't understand: genuine courage, selfless service, and the quiet strength that comes from surviving hell to protect others. Their mockery wasn't just personal insult. It was an attack on every woman who had ever worn the uniform and every Marine who had ever bled for their country. But fate had decided that this particular Friday night would be different, bringing together a decorated war hero trying to find peace and a group of privileged college students about to learn that some lessons can only be taught the hard way. The trouble started when Chad Morrison, a junior at UC San Diego and president of Beta Theta Pi, spotted Maria sitting alone. To him, she was just another conquest, a pretty girl who looked vulnerable and isolated. His fraternity brothers had been drinking since dinner, celebrating the end of midterms with the reckless abandon that comes from never facing real consequences. Chad's approach was textbook predatory, sliding onto the stool beside her with alcohol-fueled confidence. Assuming his charm and persistence would eventually wear down her resistance. "Hey, gorgeous, you look lonely," he slurred, his expensive cologne mixing with the stench of cheap beer, when Maria politely declined his advances, explaining she just wanted to drink alone. Chad's ego couldn't accept rejection. His friends gathered around, sensing entertainment in the making. The dynamic shifted from unwanted flirtation to pack mentality harassment, with each boy trying to outdo the others in crude comments and aggressive posturing. Maria's military training kicked in immediately, but not in the way the college boys expected. Instead of escalating to physical confrontation, she began calculating. Her tactical mind assessed threats, escape routes, and potential collateral damage to innocent bystanders. She could have ended the situation in seconds. Her hand-to-hand combat training made her more than capable of handling drunk college students. But Maria understood something they didn't. True strength isn't about proving your power. It's about choosing when and how to use it. She made a conscious decision to control the situation through discipline rather than violence. Her phone became her weapon of choice. Fingers steady as she composed a single text message to her unit: "O'Malley's Code Red. Bring dress blues." The message was simple, but every Marine who received it understood the gravity. Code Red meant a fellow Marine was in serious trouble and needed immediate backup. The dress blues request meant this was about honor, not just safety. Maria's first move was psychological warfare. She sat back down, ordered another beer, and waited with the patience of someone who had spent countless hours in surveillance operations. Her silence unnerved the college boys, who interpreted it as weakness rather than tactical restraint. Chad became bolder, grabbing her wrist when she tried to leave, his friends dumping her purse contents on the floor with the casual cruelty of people who had never faced real consequences. The discovery of her military ID should have been a warning, but instead, it became fuel for their mockery. They began making jokes about women in combat, suggesting she had earned her rank through special favors rather than merit. Each comment was a test of Maria's discipline, her hands remaining steady on her beer bottle while rage built inside her like pressure in a volcano. But the college boys had no idea that their crude jokes about military service were being heard by someone who had saved more lives than they would ever touch, and that backup was already on the way. The harassment escalated in stages, each more degrading than the last. Initially, Chad's approach was standard bar pickup behavior, unwanted but not necessarily threatening. When Maria remained unresponsive, his tactics shifted to intimidation. He began invading her personal space, blocking her path to the exit, and making increasingly crude comments about her appearance. His fraternity brothers, emboldened by alcohol and peer pressure, joined in with their own contributions. The second phase brought physical contact. Chad grabbed her wrist, ostensibly to prevent her from leaving, but really to assert dominance when she broke free with a move that should have warned him about her training. He laughed it off as luck. His friends began touching her belongings, dumping her purse, and rifling through her personal items like scavengers. The discovery of her military ID marked the beginning of the third phase, targeted harassment based on her service. The final escalation came when they began mocking her military service directly. Comments about women not belonging in combat, suggestions that she had slept her way to her rank, and crude jokes about military life revealed the depth of their ignorance and disrespect. They had crossed from harassment into something far more serious, dishonoring the uniform and everyone who had worn it. Other bar patrons began noticing the commotion, but their reactions varied. Some looked uncomfortable but didn't intervene, following the unwritten rule of minding their own business. Others, particularly older veterans, watched with growing anger but respected Maria's apparent decision to handle the situation herself. The bartender, a former Navy petty officer, kept glancing over but held back, recognizing something in Maria's posture that suggested she was in control despite appearances. The college boys fed off the attention, their voices growing louder as they performed for their audience. They began making broader statements about military service, veterans, and women in combat, unaware that their words were being heard by people who had actually served. The tension in the bar was building like a storm front, with multiple groups of people growing increasingly agitated by the display of disrespect. Throughout the ordeal, Maria demonstrated the kind of discipline that separates professional warriors from weekend fighters. Every instinct screamed at her to respond with force, but she understood that violence would only validate their assumptions about women being emotional and unstable. Instead, she chose a response that would be far more devastating. She let them hang themselves with their own words while backup arrived. Her decision to text her unit rather than handle the situation alone showed tactical thinking beyond personal pride. She understood that this wasn't just about her. It was about every woman who had ever worn the uniform, every Marine who had ever served, and every person who had ever been dismissed or disrespected because of their appearance or gender. The situation required a response that would send a message far beyond the confines of O'Malley's bar. As the minutes ticked by, Maria's phone began buzzing with responses from her unit. Short, professional acknowledgments that backup was en route. The college boys, drunk on alcohol and their own perceived power, had no idea that their actions were being broadcast to a group of people who had sworn oaths to protect each other. The calm before the storm was ending, and the real reckoning was about to begin. And then, exactly 20 minutes after Maria sent her text, the front door of O'Malley's bar opened, and everything changed. The moment reached its breaking point when Chad, interpreting Maria's continued silence as complete submission, decided to escalate beyond harassment into outright humiliation. He grabbed her by the shoulders, pulling her close enough that she could smell the alcohol on his breath, and announced to the entire bar that he was teaching this soldier girl her place. His friends cheered, one of them pulling out his phone to record what they thought would be a hilarious video of a woman being put in her place. The situation spiraled beyond simple harassment into something far more dangerous. Chad's grip tightened on Maria's shoulders as he began making increasingly violent threats. suggesting what he might do to her if she didn't show proper respect. His fraternity brothers formed a tighter circle, effectively trapping her against the bar while they continued their verbal assault. The few bar patrons who might have intervened were either too intimidated by the group dynamics or too drunk to fully comprehend what was happening. This was the moment when Maria's military training collided with her human limits. Her body was coiled like a spring, every muscle fiber ready to unleash years of combat training on these privileged college students. She could have hospitalized all of them before they knew what hit them. But she also understood that giving in to that impulse would destroy everything she had worked for, validate every stereotype about women in combat, and potentially end her military career. Trapped between her warrior instincts and her professional discipline, Maria faced a choice that would define not just her own future, but the message sent to every person who had ever been dismissed or disrespected because of their gender, race, or background. She could end the harassment immediately through violence, proving her physical capabilities, but also confirming their beliefs about women being emotional and unstable. Or she could maintain her discipline and trust that her backup would arrive in time. The internal conflict was devastating. Every fiber of her being screamed for action, for the satisfaction of showing these boys what real strength looked like. Her hands trembled slightly as she fought against instincts honed by years of training and combat experience. The purple heart on her chest, hidden beneath her civilian clothes, seemed to burn against her skin, a reminder of the oath she had taken to protect others, even when they didn't deserve it. Chad's grip tightened, his threats becoming more explicit, and Maria realized that her window for peaceful resolution was closing rapidly. The situation was escalating beyond harassment into assault, and she would soon have no choice but to defend herself physically. Her phone buzzed with another message from her unit. They were close, but might not arrive in time. In that moment of crisis, Maria made a decision that would be studied in military leadership courses for years to come. Instead of responding with force, she looked Chad directly in the eyes and spoke with the quiet authority of someone who had faced real danger and survived. "You have no idea who you're messing with," she said, her voice carrying the weight of 2 bronze stars and a purple heart. "But you're about to find out." The change in her demeanor was subtle but unmistakable. Her posture shifted from defensive to predatory, her eyes hardening with the look of someone who had killed before and would do so again if necessary. For the first time since the harassment began, Chad felt a flicker of genuine fear. Something in her voice, her bearing, suggested that he had made a terrible mistake. Because at that exact moment, the front door of O'Malley's bar swung open, and 10 Marines in full dress blues stepped inside, their ceremonial swords gleaming and their faces carved from stone. The Marines who entered O'Malley's bar that night weren't just responding to a distress call. They were answering a summons to defend their honor, their sister in arms, and everything they had sworn to protect. Gunnery Sergeant Torres, a 20-year veteran with 3 combat deployments, led the formation. Behind him came Sergeant Williams, Corporal Martinez, and 7 other Marines, each one having dropped everything to respond to Maria's call. They had taken the time to don their dress blues because this wasn't just about stopping harassment. It was about sending a message. The dress blue uniform represents the highest traditions of the Marine Corps, worn at ceremonies, funerals, and moments of supreme importance. By choosing to wear them, Maria's unit was elevating this confrontation from a bar fight to a defense of military honor itself. The bar fell silent as the Marines entered, their synchronized movements creating an almost supernatural presence. They moved with the precision of a drill team, each step calculated and purposeful. The college boys' laughter died in their throats as they found themselves surrounded by men and women who radiated an aura of controlled violence that no amount of alcohol could mask. Chad's grip on Maria's shoulders loosened as he turned to face the newcomers, his alcohol-addled brain struggling to process what he was seeing. These weren't just Marines, they were Marines in full ceremonial dress, which meant this situation had escalated far beyond a simple bar confrontation. The weight of their collective presence was suffocating, like standing in the eye of a hurricane. Gunnery Sergeant Torres stepped forward, his voice cutting through the bar noise with the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "Gentlemen, you're harassing our intelligence analyst. Staff Sergeant Gonzalez holds 2 Bronze Stars and a Purple Heart from Afghanistan. She's saved more lives than you'll ever touch." His words carried the weight of absolute truth, each syllable precisely enunciated and loaded with barely contained fury. The revelation hit the college boys like a physical blow. The woman they had been mocking as a paper pusher was actually a decorated war hero whose intelligence work had prevented countless American deaths. Chad's face went pale as he realized the magnitude of his mistake. But Torres wasn't finished. She could have ended this herself, but she called us instead. That's called discipline, something you wouldn't understand. What followed was a master class in psychological warfare, without raising their voices or making physical threats. The Marines systematically dismantled every assumption the college boys had made. They detailed Maria's actual service record, her role in identifying and neutralizing a terrorist cell planning attacks on U.S. bases, her analysis that had prevented the deaths of over 200 Marines, and the Purple Heart she had earned by refusing to abandon her post while under enemy fire. Sergeant Williams stepped forward, his voice deadly quiet. "You want to know what real courage looks like? It's working through shrapnel wounds to save your brother's lives. It's making life and death decisions while mortars are falling around you. It's choosing discipline over violence when drunk college boys mistake kindness for weakness." Each word was a surgical strike, designed to cut through their alcohol-fueled bravado and expose the cowardice beneath. The college boys tried to apologize, but their words fell flat against the wall of military discipline surrounding them. These Marines had seen real combat, lost friends to enemy fire, and carried scars both visible and hidden. They had no patience for the privileged ignorance of college students who had never faced real consequences for their actions. The confrontation reached its peak when Torres addressed the broader implications of their behavior. "You disrespected every woman who's ever worn this uniform, every Marine who's ever served, and every family who's ever lost someone defending your right to act like fools." The words hung in the air like a judgment, final and irrevocable. The Marines escorted Maria out of the bar with the same precision they had used to enter, leaving the college boys to face a room full of disgusted patrons and a manager who immediately banned them for life. The transformation was complete from predators to prey, from confident to cowering, from dominant to defeated. The video captured by other bar patrons would soon make them infamous, but the real damage was already done. But the story of that night was far from over, and the consequences would ripple outward in ways none of them could have imagined. The video of the confrontation exploded across social media within hours, garnering millions of views and sparking national conversation about respect for military service and the treatment of women veterans. Chad Morrison's face became synonymous with privileged ignorance, his name trending on Twitter alongside hashtags like Respect Our Veterans and Women Warriors. The immediate fallout was swift and merciless. UC San Diego's administration, facing massive public pressure and alumni outrage, expelled Chad within 48 hours. His fraternity, Beta Theta Pi, lost its charter after the national organization determined that the incident violated their core values. The other boys involved faced disciplinary action, ranging from suspension to mandatory community service at the local VA hospital, where they would be forced to confront the reality of military service they had mocked. The incident sparked broader conversations about military service, gender equality, and the treatment of veterans in civilian society. Military advocacy groups used the video as a teaching tool, highlighting the disconnect between public perception and the reality of women's contributions to national defense. Universities across the country implemented new programs to educate students about military service and veteran affairs. O'Malley's Bar became an unlikely symbol of respect for military service, with the management installing a wall of honor featuring photos of local veterans and their service records. The establishment's clientele shifted, becoming a gathering place for veterans and their supporters while discouraging the kind of behavior that had led to the incident. Maria's promotion to gunnery sergeant came with selection for advanced intelligence training, recognizing both her professional capabilities and her grace under pressure. She became a sought-after speaker at military academies and civilian universities, sharing her story to educate others about the realities of military service and the importance of treating all veterans with respect. The incident also transformed her relationship with her unit. The Marines who had responded to her call formed an even tighter bond, understanding that they had participated in something larger than themselves. They had defended not just their colleague, but the honor of their service and the memory of all who had worn the uniform. The story of that night at O'Malley's Bar became a powerful reminder that respect isn't automatically given, it's earned through service, sacrifice, and the willingness to put others before yourself. It highlighted the often invisible contributions of women in military service and the price paid by those who serve in silence. Most importantly, it demonstrated that true strength isn't about physical dominance or verbal aggression, but about the discipline to choose the right response even in the face of provocation. Today, when people see a woman in uniform or out of it, they might remember the story of Staff Sergeant Maria Viper Gonzalez and think twice before making assumptions about what she's capable of or what she's sacrificed for their freedom. Because sometimes the quiet person sitting alone at the bar is the one who saved hundreds of lives while you were playing video games. And disrespecting them means answering to everyone who understands what real service looks like. The lesson is simple but profound. Never underestimate the person beside you. You never know what battles they've fought, what sacrifices they've made, or who will come to their defense when honor demands it. In a world that often confuses loudness with strength and aggression with courage, Maria's story stands as a testament to the quiet power of those who serve others without seeking recognition and the fierce loyalty of those who serve alongside them.